So let's talk about an iconic fountain pen, more specifically, the Lamy Safari, and I honestly cannot believe it's taken me so long to actually getting around and buying a Lamy Safari, because these are iconic fountain pens, and they're actually really common fountain pens. For a fountain pen, which is actually pretty rare, you can actually go ahead and buy these at a lot of regular bookstores or stationery stores, and that's one of the cool things about Lamy Safaris and just Lamy in general, because they are a proper brand that have more than just fountain pens. They can really offer their pens at a lot of stores that don't really specialize in fountain pens. And these fountain pens are actually pretty affordable. They're only about $37 in Australia. But even so, it's taken me a long time to get around to actually using one of these, because here's the thing, when you usually start off as a fountain pen user, you'll usually get introduced to a top 5 list, and they'll always have a Lamy Safari, and they'll always have a Pilot Metropolitan, and they will usually say, choose one. And in my case, I chose Pilot. Not the Pilot Metropolitan, but I got a Pilot 78G, and that was my thing. I joined Team Pilot, and I was using Pilot for a very long time, and just neglecting Lamy. And it is pretty amazing, because a lot of people choose Lamy and they swear by them, so I had to get in and actually see what the whole riffraff was about. But before I get into the review, let's talk about the history of the Lamy Safari, because this pen has been around for a very long time. This pen came out in the mid-1980s, and it has stuck around pretty much unchanged since then. It was introduced at around that time period when everyone was still using fountain pens, and it was introduced as a student pen, and as a result, these pens had to be cheap and pretty much indestructible, because, you know, kids are horrible at treating their stationery, and I should know that pretty damn well. But these pens are awesome, and they have stuck around for so long, and as a result, a lot of people have used this fountain pen. A lot of people I talk to on the forums and on YouTube say they've been using Lamy Safaris for so long, so this pen had a lot of reputation to look up to. So with all that history for context, let's talk about this Lamy Safari, because this is a Lamy Safari that you cannot actually buy anymore. This is a Lamy Safari Neon Lime that was produced as a special limited edition in 2015, because Lamy every year for the past few years have been making special edition colours to go alongside their pretty big range of colours. And here's the thing, the Neon Lime edition was not the best received Lamy Safari, and as a result, even though it came out 3 years ago, I bought this new pretty much at the end of last year, brand new 2 years, which meant that I got this pen on special. Usually you'd pay about $37 for this pen, but I got it for about $18, and was pretty much the reason why I bought this pen. When I bought this fountain pen, it came in this box. The box is really nice, there's nothing terribly amazing about it, it's not like the Lamy 2000 box, but it's just simple cardboard, but the styling of it is nice, minimalistic, and just kicks it up a notch, making it look nicer than the boring boxes that you'll get with a lot of other fountain pens. With that, you'll get the pen, and as well as that, you'll also get one ink cartridge, blue to be exact. And that's the first gripe that I have with this pen, because while I do say this pen is only about $37 new, you will have to spend an extra $6 to get a cartridge converter with it, which it's not terribly expensive, but here's the thing, if Pilot for about $18 is able to supply a Pilot Metropolitan with a proper squeeze converter, why can't Lamy include a converter in their pen? In reality, you're going to be paying about $43 to be using your own ink, or about $4 every time you're going to buy a 5-pack of Lamy ink cartridges. Okay, so as always, let's jump into the specs of this fountain pen. So capped, this pen is about 14 centimeters long, uncapped it is 12.9 centimeters long, posted it is 16.4 centimeters long, and in terms of the weight, it weighs 17 grams posted and 10 grams unposted. So in terms of the specs, they are very, very unoffensive. They are very ergonomic, and they should be ergonomic for most people. So let's talk about it uncapped, 14 centimeters. Most people should be able to hold this pen uncapped, unless you have these giant, mammoth hands. Most people should be able to hold this very comfortably uncapped. But the thing is, if you do want to post it, this pen posts very nicely and secures very nicely. And when you post it, it feels very nice. It feels very balanced. Maybe a little bit back heavy, but it is still very nice. But you're always going to get a bit of a back heavy feeling when you post a pen. In terms of the weight, I do like the weight posted. 10 grams is nearing on the minimum that I'd like a pen to be, but it's still very comfortable to write with unposted. But when I do write with this pen, I would generally use it posted. Now, here's the thing that will usually divide most people about this pen, and it is the ergonomic faceted grip on this pen, and that's something that a lot of Lamys have. This pen has two facets here, and it's intended for people that have a tripod grip. This is when you put one finger here and here where the facets are, and if you have that grip, it is very, very comfortable. It fits well, it fits very comfortably, and I know people who use this grip and they will swear by the ergonomics of this pen. But here's the thing, I don't have a tripod grip, I have something called a lateral tripod, so what I'll do is I'll bring my thumb and pretty much push it up against my index finger, and that's what's comfortable for me. And that's why for a long time I said I don't like the ergonomics of the Lamy Safari, because it's just not very comfortable. There's a lot of my thumb that's not really touching the pen, it's up against here. It wasn't comfortable at all. And a lot of people say that that is the deal breaker for this pen. And here's the thing, when I use this pen now, I've sort of gotten used to it. What I'll do is I'll instead move my finger backwards up here where the area is, and that makes it feel a little bit more comfortable. But the ergonomics is something that really will divide this pen, and if you are going to buy this pen, I really do suggest please go to the store and actually test the pen out before you buy it. Another thing that I'll say about the Lamy Safari is the grip here isn't the most anti-slip grip in the world. Oils will build up if you're using this for a long time, and that is just something that I'd like to point out. Okay, let's take a look at the whole body of this fountain pen. So, the Lamy Safari design is not really designed to be the most aesthetically pleasing design in the world. It's a very Bauhaus-inspired look, which means it's designed to be very functional and have function over aesthetics. And you can see it here. It's very tubular here, there are some straight bits here to stop it rolling over, and that's what you're going to get with the Lamy Safari. It's very functional because it's designed to be a workhorse pen, and you really can feel that it is a workhorse pen. So if you are buying this pen, don't expect it to be, the most beautiful pen in the world. If you're looking for a beautiful pen, get a Visconti. But if you want a workhorse pen, certainly buy this fountain pen. And when I do mean a workhorse pen that can survive anything, I do mean it, because the body of this fountain pen is pretty much indestructible, because it's made from ABS. Now, if you don't know, ABS is the same material that they use to make Lego, and that stuff is near indestructible. It is very hard, which means it's very wear resistant, and after using this for about 2 months, I can say that it is really scratch resistant. Usually in plastic fountain pens, there will usually be some micro scratches. Here, it looks as good as it did the day it left the factory, which is pretty amazing. No scratches whatsoever. So for long term, I can definitely say that this pen will certainly survive. One thing I'll also say about the body is this neon lime is pretty awesome in the way that it reacts with certain lighting situations, because when they say neon, they certainly do mean neon. It's not glow-in-the-dark neon, but when you put it under light, it certainly does produce this awesome glow, and it produces a different glow when you put it under different types of light, which is pretty cool, but it has been such a pain to actually photograph. Now, if we look on the barrel, you'll be able to see an ink window, and I'll say that the ink window actually works if you look at it from the correct perspective. So if you look at it face on and actually look at it with a light source, you will certainly be able to see that with this cartridge anyway, there's pretty much no ink left. However, if you do look at the ink window when you're writing, say like this, and there is no light source, you'll pretty much be fooled into thinking that there is a lot of ink left. So while the ink window works, you do have to look at it with light coming in, and as well as that, you have to look at it from the right direction. Now, if we take off the back of the pen, you'll see twists right off, and what you'll see are the threads of the pen. These threads are pretty stiff. I'm pretty sure you can apply a lot of pressure and this thing won't break. You can see cartridge is inserted here and it's almost empty, so I'll probably have to replace that soon. If we look at the cap of the pen, you can see this cross at the top of the pen, which indicates that it is a fountain pen. So if you have the pen in your pocket, you can look down and you can see the cross, which shows that it is a fountain pen, because if you do have the rollerball version of the Lamy Safari, there will only be a one line across, which shows that it is a rollerball. If you look at the clip of the pen, clip is very functional and the clip works, very durable. What can I say? It works. Alright then, let's talk about the nib of the fountain pen, because the nib and the nib range is something that I have to praise Lamy for. So, nib range is pretty ginormous, because normally when you buy a lower end fountain pen, you'll usually get the option of having a fine, medium, and usually a broad version of it. If you're extra lucky, you'll probably get an extra fine, medium, or broad. With this, because their nibs are very standardized along their line of fountain pens, you get extra fine, medium, broad, and stub nibs, which is really cool. And the thing is, you can go on Lamy's website and buy replacement nibs for about $15 each. And as well as that, the way that you change out these nibs are pretty cool. So with a normal fountain pen, you'd have to pull the feed out and then lift the nib off and then replace it. With this, all you have to do is get a piece of tissue or toilet paper or whatever and pull the nib off. It's very, very simple and super quick. And then all you have to do is slide the nib back on and bam, works like that. It's very, very simple. It means you can quickly change between nibs. So let's talk about the nib that's on this fountain pen. This is a steel nib and it is a medium nib. And here's the thing, when you go to the store and actually buy a Lamy Safari, the chances are that most of those pens are going to have a medium nib on them, and they're a pretty wide medium nib. Reason being is medium nibs work for most people and are very good for most people's handwriting. But the medium nib on this pen is pretty good. It's very smooth, and that's something that's pretty amazing considering how many of these nibs that they are cranking out. And if you look at the manufacturing of Lamy's nibs, you can see that their attention to quality control is pretty good. You can see that they scan their nibs once they've tipped them and grind them, which means that usually their nibs are going to be pretty good. And it just goes to show what a little bit of quality control does. In terms of writing, I can certainly write with this pen for quite a long time, just because the nib is so smooth and it works so well with the feed. The feed is certainly one of the best things about this pen. Super reliable. I've never had this pen skip on me at all. As well as that, the feed is wet enough for this medium nib, but it's certainly not a gusher, which means I can use this on lower quality paper, paper that's not Clairefontaine or Rhodia, and have that paper not feather on me, which is something that I really look for on everyday workhorse pens. In terms of flex, that's where this thing goes down. There's pretty much no flex in these Lamy style nibs, which is a little bit annoying. If you do push down on this pen, you can get a little bit of flex from it, but most of what you see as flex is really just going to be more ink flowing down from the nib. So, let's talk about what I don't like about this nib. While it is a really, really good nib in terms of it being very smooth and all, a complaint that I have with this nib is it's just very boring to use, and I say that in the nicest way possible. I would use this pen to, do essays in, but apart from that, I just don't think this pen is terribly exciting. It's certainly a big step up from any ballpoint or rollerball, but if you want to do calligraphy or anything, just get something else, something that flexes, and something that's just I guess, fun to write with. So that's my take on the Lamy Safari's nib. Welcome to a writing sample with the Lamy Safari. This has a medium nib, a European medium nib, and the ink that it's using is Lamy Blue. I was fortunate enough to find some very cheap cartridges. I think I found about 5 for $1. Super good steel, and that's what I've been using since that. The paper is Clairefontaine. Let's get into a quick writing sample. And as you can see from that writing sample, it was pretty good. There's no drama whatsoever. Though you can see very little line variation in that writing sample. Though I gotta hand it to it, there was no feedback from the pen. It wrote very, very nicely. As you can see, there's a little bit of shading in the ink, a little bit darker here, and here, and here, and a little bit lighter around the C's. This B's a little bit lighter. So in terms of ink delivery, it's alright, but there is certainly a little bit of shading that can be had. If we look at line variation, or just natural line variation in the grinding of the nib, there's pretty much no natural line variation in terms of going up or down. If we look at adding pressure to the nib, here is no pressure, and let's slightly build up pressure. And that's as far as it will go. And yes, there is a little bit of line variation you can see here, but you really do have to push it much more than I would naturally push it. So no line variation and a lot of pressure. So if we look, you certainly can squeeze the tines and get a little bit of line variation out of it, but normally, like when you're actually doing proper writing, there's no way, because it would slow you down so much. And as well as that, the contrast between thick and thin is really what creates the illusion of proper, awesome line variation, and the contrast between the two is pretty much next to none. So that's the thing. There is a little bit of line variation, but there is not much contrast between them. If I look at wetness, this is a pretty wet nib, surprisingly. I was a bit taken back when I found out how wet it was, but nice and wet. If we look at reverse writing, surprisingly, you can actually reverse write, and the thing is, most European nibs and Japanese nibs will refuse to reverse write, but for some reason Chinese nibs do. But this one reverse writes pretty well. And let's just see how the ink keeps up when you write quickly. I'm not trying to be legible or anything, but just want to show if you write quickly, somehow, the ink will be able to keep up.